Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Pioneer, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship had been exploring this section of space for 3 months now, mapping new systems and looking for planets that might support human colonies. It was routine work, but Jake enjoyed the quiet moments between star jumps when he could think about the vastness of space. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," said Dr. Lisa Grant from her station. She was the ship's linguist and communication specialist, a young woman with bright eyes who got excited about every new discovery. "There are artificial signals coming from the next system. They're definitely not natural." Jake walked over to her console and looked at the readings. The signals were complex and organized, clearly made by intelligent beings. This was what every exploration crew hoped to find. First contact with a new alien species. "How far away?" Jake asked. 2 light hours from our current position," replied Commander Ben Torres, the ship's tactical officer. Ben was a careful man who always thought about security first. "The signals are coming from multiple sources. It looks like they have several ships in that system." Jake nodded. This was the moment every explorer dreamed of, but also the most dangerous. First contact could go many ways, and not all of them were good. The Pioneer was not a warship. It carried only basic defensive weapons and a crew of 60 people whose job was to study and map, not fight. "Take us to the edge of the system," Jake ordered. "Nice and slow. I want full scans running, but keep our weapons powered down. Lisa, start working on those signals. See if you can figure out anything about their language." The Pioneer moved toward the alien signals. Chief Engineer Sam Parker reported from the engine room that all systems were running smoothly. Communications Officer Amy Wells monitored all frequencies, listening for any sign that the aliens had detected them. As they got closer, the ship's sensors revealed the truth. There were not just a few alien ships in the system. There were dozens of them, arranged in what looked like military formations around a large space station. The ships were big and heavily armed, with designs unlike anything humans had ever seen. "Captain," Ben Torres said quietly, "those are definitely warships, and they're all pointing in our direction." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Pioneer had stumbled into what looked like a major alien military base. The smart thing would be to retreat immediately and report back to Earth, but protocol required them to attempt peaceful contact first. "Lisa, can you send a basic friendship message on their frequencies?" Jake asked. "Working on it now, Captain," Lisa replied, her fingers flying over her console. "I'm using mathematical concepts and basic symbols. Universal stuff that any intelligent species should understand." Before she could finish preparing the message, alarm bells started ringing throughout the ship. Amy Wells looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Captain, they're broadcasting something to us. It sounds angry." The main screen flickered and showed the image of an alien face. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and threatening, even though none of the humans could understand the words. "I don't think they're happy to see us," Ben Torres said, checking his weapon systems. "Stay calm," Jake ordered. "Lisa, send the friendship message now." But it was too late. The alien ships were already moving. 12 sleek fighters launched from the main formation and headed straight for the Pioneer. Their weapons were charging, and their intent was clear. "They're attacking," Ben shouted. "Shields up, all hands to battle stations." The Pioneers shuddered as the first alien weapons hit their shields. Jake grabbed his chair as the ship rocked from side to side. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. "Sam, I need more power to the shields," Jake called to the engine room. "Working on it, Captain," Sam's voice came back over the intercom. "These aliens hit harder than anything we've practiced against." The Pioneer was built for exploration, not combat. Its shields were designed to protect against space debris and radiation, not military weapons. But Sam Parker was a clever engineer. He started rerouting power from non-essential systems, giving the shields more energy than they were designed to handle. Ben Torres fired back with the ship's defensive lasers. They were not powerful weapons, meant more for clearing obstacles than fighting, but he used them with skill. He targeted the alien fighters' engines and weapon systems, trying to disable rather than destroy. These aliens fly in very tight formations, Ben observed as he worked. They don't expect us to target specific systems. They're used to enemies who just try to blow them up. Amy Wells was busy jamming the alien communications, sending false signals that confused their targeting computers. She had learned electronic warfare as part of her training, but never expected to use it in real combat. Their targeting systems are getting confused, Amy reported. They keep locking onto empty space instead of us. The battle continued for 20 minutes. The Pioneer, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, managed to disable 4 alien fighters and damage 3 others. But the ship was taking heavy damage. Hull breaches were appearing, and several systems were failing. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," Sam reported from engineering. "The shields are at 15% and falling." Jake made the hardest decision of his career. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump." Ben, lay down covering fire. "Amy, send a message to Earth. Command, tell them we've made contact with a hostile alien species." "What should I tell them about their military strength?" Amy asked. Jake looked at the screen showing dozens of alien warships and information around their space station. The 12 fighters attacking them were just a tiny part of a much larger force. "Tell them these aliens have significant military capability. We're retreating to avoid further conflict." The Pioneer's jump drive charged up while Ben Torres kept the alien fighters busy. His precise shooting had surprised them, and they were being more careful now, giving the human ship the time it needed. "Jump drive ready," Sam announced. "Execute jump." Jake ordered. The Pioneer disappeared in a flash of light, leaving the alien fighters shooting at empty space. On the alien command ship, Supreme Admiral Kethver stared at the spot where the human ship had been. His species, the Zerathians, had conquered 17 different civilizations over the past 3 centuries. They had never encountered anything like what just happened. "Report," he demanded from his tactical officer. "The alien ship disabled 4 of our fighters and damaged 3 others before escaping. Our pilots report that the aliens used tactics we have never seen before. They targeted specific systems instead of trying to destroy our ships completely." General Vexter, standing beside the Supreme Admiral, studied the battle data. Their ship was small and lightly armed, but they fought with incredible precision. "Their electronic warfare capabilities are beyond anything we have encountered." Supreme Admiral Kethver's 4 eyes narrowed as he thought about what this meant. For 300 years, the Zerathian Empire had been the dominant military power. In this region of space, they had crushed every species that opposed them through overwhelming force and superior numbers. But this new species, these humans, had fought differently. They had used intelligence and skill instead of brute force. A single small ship had held off 12 Zerathian fighters and escaped with minimal damage. "Summon the War Council," Kethver ordered. "We need to discuss this new threat. If one small human ship can fight like this, what happens when we face their entire military?" What the Supreme Admiral did not know was that the Pioneer was not a military ship at all. It was an exploration vessel with a crew of scientists and engineers. Its weapons were the smallest that humans put on their ships, and its tactics were improvised by people who had never expected to fight a real battle. The Zerathian Empire had just declared war on humanity based on their encounter with what humans would consider a lightly armed research vessel. And now they were planning to mobilize their massive military forces to crush What they believed was a dangerous new enemy. The stage was set for a conflict that would shake both civilizations, built on a fundamental misunderstanding that would only grow larger as time went on. The War Council chamber on the Zarethian homeworld of Kefethara was a massive room carved from black stone. Ancient weapons from conquered worlds hung on the walls, trophies from 3 centuries of military victories. General Vexter stood before a holographic display showing the battle with the human ship, replaying the footage for the 5th time that day. "Watch this part again," Vexter said, pointing at the display. "The human ship targets our fighters' weapon systems with surgical precision. They disable instead of destroy. This is not the behavior of a desperate enemy. This is the behavior of a species that fights with complete confidence." Supreme Admiral Kethver studied the images with his 4 eyes. The human ship had been smaller than a Zarethian destroyer, yet it had fought 12 of their best fighters and escaped. More troubling was how the humans had fought. Every Zarethian enemy in the past had tried to ram their ships or fire wildly when outnumbered. The humans had been calm and methodical. "What do we know about their technology?" Kethver asked. War. Technician Meldor activated another display. "Their shields operated at frequencies we have never encountered. Their weapons were precise, but not particularly powerful. However, their electronic warfare capabilities were impressive. They jammed our targeting systems using methods our computers could not counter." General Vexter nodded grimly. "Most concerning is their tactical coordination. The entire crew seemed to work as one mind. When their engineer rerouted power, their weapons officer immediately adapted his firing patterns. When their communications officer jammed our systems, their pilot changed course to take advantage of our confusion." Commander Zelenoth, the Empire's best scout leader, spoke from her position near the wall. "Supreme Admiral, I request permission to take a reconnaissance fleet to human space. We need to know more about this enemy before we make our next move." "Granted," Cuthver said. "Take your fastest ships, find their homeworld, learn their strength, but do not engage them directly. We need information, not another battle." Meanwhile, the U.S. Pioneer limped into Earth's solar system 3 days after the encounter. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his damaged command chair, looking at his battered ship through the internal cameras. Hull plates were missing, several decks had been sealed off due to atmosphere loss, and the main engines were running at 60% power. "Earth Control, this is Pioneer requesting priority docking at Luna Station." Amy Wells transmitted from her communications console. "Pioneer, you are cleared for emergency docking." "Medical teams are standing by," came the reply. Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her linguistic analysis station. She had spent the entire journey home studying the alien transmission they had received. "Captain, I think I'm starting to understand some of their language structure. They have multiple tonal layers that suggest a very complex society." "What did they say to us?" Jake asked. "Near as I can tell, it was something like surrender or be destroyed. Very direct. No attempt at communication beyond that threat." "Commander." Ben Torres finished his tactical report and handed it to the captain. "Jake, those aliens have military technology that's different from ours, but not necessarily better. Their weapons are powerful but crude. Their tactics are based on overwhelming force rather than precision. What worries me," Jake said, "is how many ships they had. We saw dozens of warships in that one system. If that's just a single base, how big is their empire?" 3 hours later, Jake found himself in the briefing room at Frontier Command on Luna Station. Admiral Kate Sullivan, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, listened to his report without interruption. Around the table sat other senior officers, all taking notes and asking occasional questions. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Admiral Sullivan said when Jake finished. "You encountered an alien fleet of unknown size. They attacked immediately without attempting communication. Your ship, designed for exploration, managed to disable 4 enemy fighters and escape. That's correct, Admiral. And you believe this alien empire poses a significant military threat? Jake nodded. Based on what we saw, they have substantial forces and a very aggressive attitude toward contact with other species. Admiral Sullivan looked around the table at her staff officers. Recommendations? General Frank Murphy, commander of the Terran Defense Force, spoke first. We need more information. One encounter isn't enough to determine their full capabilities or intentions. I agree, said Admiral Helen Ross, commander of the Second Fleet. We should send a reconnaissance mission to gather intelligence about their military strength and territorial boundaries. Admiral Sullivan made her decision. Captain Rick Davis, you'll take a small reconnaissance fleet to the border region. 5 ships should be enough for intelligence gathering while avoiding unnecessary provocation. Your mission is to observe and report, not to engage. Captain Davis nodded. He was an experienced officer who had commanded border patrol missions for 15 years. What's our rules of engagement, Admiral? Defend yourselves if attacked, but avoid escalation. We want to understand what we're dealing with before we make any major decisions. 2 weeks later, Captain Davis led his 5-ship reconnaissance fleet toward the region where the Pioneer had encountered the aliens. His flagship was the UES Ranger, a patrol cruiser designed for long-range missions. With him were the UES Falcon, UES Thunder, UES Liberty, and UES Sovereign, all similar patrol vessels with mixed crews of military personnel and civilian specialists. Dr. Lisa Grant had volunteered to join the mission as xenobiology advisor. She worked alongside Lieutenant Commander Steve Clark, the fleet's intelligence officer, analyzing every piece of data they could gather about the alien empire. We're calling them Zarathians, Lisa explained to the senior staff during their first briefing. Based on linguistic analysis of their transmission to the Pioneer, that appears to be what they call themselves. Captain Nicole Webb, commanding the UES Falcon, studied the star charts. Any idea how far their territory extends? Unknown, replied Captain Pete Johnson from the UES Thunder. But based on the size of that military installation, we should assume it's substantial. The human reconnaissance fleet spent 3 weeks mapping the border region, staying just outside what they believed was Zarathian space. They discovered evidence of alien activity in multiple star systems, mining operations, communication relays, and patrol routes that suggested a large and well-organized empire. Commander Zelenoth was conducting her own reconnaissance mission from the Zarathian side. Her 3 fastest scout ships had been tracking the human fleet's movements, trying to understand their purpose and capabilities. They are not behaving like any enemy we have encountered before, she reported to General Vexter, over encrypted communication. Instead of massing for attack, they appear to be conducting detailed scans of star systems. They are studying asteroid compositions, measuring gravitational fields, and mapping solar radiation patterns. What could they want with such information? Vexter asked. Unknown. Perhaps they are selecting targets for invasion. Or perhaps they are evaluating our resources for conquest. Most disturbing is their coordination. 5 separate ships operating across multiple star systems, yet they move with perfect unity of purpose. Back on Kethathara, Supreme Admiral Kethfer received regular updates from Commander Zelenoth's reconnaissance mission. Each report made the situation seem more ominous. The humans were not acting like any enemy the Zarathians had faced before. They are conducting systematic intelligence gathering across our entire border region, General Vexter reported to the War Council. This level of methodical preparation suggests a military mind far more sophisticated than anything we have encountered. War! Technician Meldor added her analysis. Based on their scanning patterns, The humans appear to have detailed knowledge of stellar cartography and resource distribution. They are identifying the most strategically valuable systems in our territory. Supreme Admiral Kethver felt a chill run through his body. The Zerathian Empire had conquered other species by attacking quickly with overwhelming force. Their enemies had always been reactive, responding to Zerathian aggression with desperate counterattacks. But the humans were being proactive, gathering intelligence and making plans before taking any action. "How many ships are we tracking?" Kethver asked. "5 in the immediate border region," Commander Zeleth replied through the communication system. "But Supreme Admiral, there may be others operating beyond our sensor range. The humans appear to have stealth capabilities we do not fully understand." The truth was much simpler than the Zerathians realized. The 5 human ships were conducting routine border reconnaissance, the kind of mission that human space forces performed regularly whenever they encountered potential threats. Captain Davis and his crews were being careful and methodical, because that was how humans approached unknown situations, not because they were planning an invasion. But from the Zerathian perspective, the human behavior looked like the preliminary moves of a military campaign planned by a species with superior strategic thinking. The methodical intelligence gathering, the coordinated movements across multiple star systems, and the apparent confidence of operating so close to a hostile border all suggested that humanity possessed military capabilities far beyond what they had revealed. The Zerathian Third Battle Fleet was the pride of the Empire. 200 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. Fleet Commander Thexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the mighty Dreadnought Kefmara, watching his forces prepare for what he believed would be a decisive victory against the human invaders. "All ships report ready for combat," his tactical officer announced. "The enemy reconnaissance fleet has been located in the Kepler 442 system." Commander Thexmore nodded with satisfaction. The humans had made a mistake by operating so close to Zerathian space. Now they would learn the price of threatening the Empire. In his 3 decades of military service, Thexmore had never lost a battle. Today would be no different. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "We advance to combat formation. Prepare to demonstrate the full might of the Zerathian Empire." 3 star systems away, Captain Rick Davis was reviewing sensor data on the bridge of the U-ESA Ranger. His 5-ship reconnaissance fleet had been operating in the border region for 2 weeks, mapping Zerathian patrol routes and trying to understand the extent of their territory. "Captain, we're picking up a massive energy signature heading our way," reported Lieutenant Commander Steve Clark from the sensor station. "It's big, really big," Captain Davis frowned. "How big?" 200 contacts, minimum. All showing military engine signatures. They're coming straight for us at maximum speed." Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her analysis station. "Captain, based on their formation and approach vector, this isn't a patrol. This is a full military assault." Captain Davis felt his stomach drop. 5 patrol ships against 200 alien warships was not a fight they could win. His mission was reconnaissance, not combat, and his ships were not designed for major battles. "All ships, this is Ranger," he transmitted to his small fleet. "We have a massive hostile force approaching. Prepare for immediate withdrawal to human space." Captain Nicole Webb responded from the UES Falcon. "Rick, my engines are showing problems from yesterday's patrol. I need 20 minutes to get them back to full power." "We don't have 20 minutes, Captain Pete Johnson said from the UES Thunder. "Those alien ships will be here in 15. The Zerathian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like an avalanche of metal and energy. 200 warships from massive dreadnoughts to swift destroyers, all focused on the 5 human ships near the system's central star. Commander Thexmore opened communications on all frequencies. His words were translated by the fleet's computers and broadcast toward the human ships. Human vessels, you have violated Zarathian space and threatened our empire. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Captain Davis looked at his tactical display. 200 ships against 5. The smart move was to run, but Captain Webb's engines were still not ready for a full-speed retreat. They needed time. "This is Captain Davis of the Terran Reconnaissance Fleet," he responded. "We are conducting peaceful exploration activities in neutral space. We have no hostile intentions toward your empire." "Lies," Commander Vexmore replied. "You have been gathering intelligence on our military installations for weeks. This is an act of war. You have 1 minute to surrender." Lieutenant Colonel Tony Mitchell, commanding the Marine detachment aboard the Ranger, checked his weapons. "Systems. Captain, if they board us, my people are ready. But against 200 ships." Captain Davis made his decision. All ships were not surrendering. "Prepare for combat maneuvering. Our job is to buy time for Falcon to get her engines online, then we retreat together." The battle began when Commander Vexmore lost patience and ordered his fleet to attack. Zarathian warships opened fire with hundreds of energy cannons, turning space around the 5 human ships into a storm of deadly light. But the humans did not respond as expected. Instead of forming a defensive line or trying to ram the enemy ships, they scattered in 5 different directions, each ship following a complex evasive pattern that made targeting difficult. Captain Nicole Webb, despite her engine problems, used the U.S. Falcon's mining lasers with deadly precision. The ship had been conducting geological surveys before the reconnaissance mission, and her mining equipment was still installed. She targeted the Zarathian ship's weapon systems, using the precise cutting beams to disable their guns instead of trying to destroy the entire vessel. "Their weapons are designed for mining, not combat," she reported over the communication channel. "But they're incredibly accurate. I can pick apart their systems piece by piece." Captain Pete Johnson on the U.S. Thunder took a different approach. His ship was the most heavily armored of the 5, designed for operations in dangerous asteroid fields. He flew straight at the largest Zarathian ships. Using his reinforced hull like a battering ram, the Zarathians had never seen anything like it. Most species tried to avoid getting hit by enemy weapons. The humans seemed to use collisions as a deliberate tactic. Johnson's ship smashed through the formation of 3 Zarathian cruisers, its reinforced nose crushing their lighter hulls. "This is impossible," General Vexter said from his position on Commander Vexmore's flagship. 5 small ships should not be able to resist 200 of our finest vessels." But the humans were not just resisting, they were winning. Each human ship seemed to know exactly what the others were doing without any communication that the Zarathians could detect. They moved like parts of a single organism, coordinating their attacks with perfect timing. Captain Davis used the U.S. Ranger's sensor array to coordinate the entire battle. His ship became the nerve center for all 5 vessels, processing targeting data and tactical information faster than the Zarathians could adapt. Every move his fleet made was calculated to cause maximum damage while avoiding unnecessary risk. The U.S. Liberty, commanded by Captain Sarah White, specialized in electronic warfare. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, had modified the ship's systems to broadcast jamming signals that completely confused Zarathian targeting computers. Enemy ships found themselves firing at empty space while the humans struck from unexpected directions. Major Paul Anderson's Marines conducted the most terrifying part of the battle. When Zarathian ships got too close, the humans used boarding pods to send small teams directly onto enemy vessels. The Zarathians had never encountered boarding tactics like these. Human Marines moved through their ships like ghosts, disabling systems and retreating before defenders could respond. "Report!" Commander Vexmore demanded as alarms rang throughout his flagship. 67 ships damaged or destroyed, his tactical officer reported with disbelief. The humans are using weapons and tactics we have never encountered. They coordinate their attacks with impossible precision. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Zarathians kept expecting the 5 human ships to be overwhelmed by sheer numbers, but it never happened. Every time they concentrated fire on one human vessel, the other 4 would strike from different directions, forcing the Zarathians to spread their attention. Chief Engineer Mary Johnson, aboard the UES Liberty, made the difference in the final phase of the battle. She had been improvising weapons from the ship's industrial equipment throughout the fight. When her ship's main guns were damaged, she used the waste processing system to launch chunks of metal at enemy ships. When the Zarathians tried to jam human communications, she turned the ship's atmospheric recycling system into a signal amplifier. "Captain Davis," she reported, "I've rigged our cargo bay doors to act as ablative armor. We can ram that big ship and survive the impact." But the breakthrough came when Captain Webb finally got her engines working properly. "All ships, this is Falcon. Engines are back online. I'm ready for full retreat." Captain Davis looked at his tactical display. His 5 ships had destroyed or disabled nearly 70 Zarathian vessels, but they were taking heavy damage. The U's Thunder had lost its main engines. The UE Sovereign was leaking atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. They had proven their point, but they could not win against such overwhelming numbers. "All ships, begin withdrawal," Davis ordered. "Thunder, can you make the jump?" "Negative," Captain Johnson replied. "Main engines are gone. You'll have to leave me behind." "Like hell we will," Captain Webb said. Falcon moving to assist Thunder. What happened next would become legend in both human and Zarathian military history. The U.S. Falcon, her engines finally working at full power, flew directly into the heart of the Zarathian formation. Captain Webb used her ship's tractor beam to grab the damaged U's Thunder and began pulling it toward the jump point. Commander Vexmore watched in amazement as one human ship sacrificed its own safety to rescue another. "They refused to abandon their damaged vessel," he reported to General Vexter. "Even when facing certain destruction, they will not leave their companions behind." The other 3 human ships formed a protective screen around the 2 damaged vessels, fighting a running battle as they retreated toward the system's edge. Captain Davis coordinated the withdrawal with the same precision he had used for the attack, each ship covering the others in sequence as the 5 human ships prepared to jump. To hint was not necessary. "We came here seeking peaceful contact, not..." Supreme Admiral Kethver stood in the Great Command Center on Kethathara, staring at the holographic display that showed the devastating results of the battle at Kepler to 442. Red markers indicated damaged or destroyed Zarathian ships, while 5 tiny blue dots represented the human vessels that had escaped. The numbers were almost impossible to believe. 70 ships, he said quietly. 5 human vessels destroyed or disabled 70 of our ships. General Vexter nodded grimly beside him. The 3rd Battle Fleet was our most experienced combat force. These were not new recruits or outdated vessels. They were our finest warriors, and the humans defeated them using tactics we have never encountered. Intelligence Officer Commander Yeltas approached with a data pad containing her preliminary analysis. She was a small Zarathian with pale gray skin and unusually bright eyes that missed nothing. Her job was to understand enemies, and what she had discovered about the humans terrified her. "Supreme Admiral, I have disturbing news about the scope of human operations," she began. "Our scout ships have detected human activity in 17 different star systems along our border. These are not the same 5 ships that fought our fleet." Kethver turned all 4 of his eyes toward her. "Explain." "The humans appear to have multiple fleets operating simultaneously across a vast region of space. While our 3rd battle fleet was engaging 5 ships at Kepler 442, Our scouts detected other human vessels conducting operations in systems hundreds of light years away. Commander Yeltis activated the holographic display to show a three-dimensional map of the border region. Red dots marked confirmed human activity, and there were far more than anyone had expected. Here, at the Vega system, our scouts observed 3 human ships conducting what appeared to be mining operations. Here, near Wolf 359, a single human vessel was detected studying a gas giant. And here, in the Proxima sector, our patrol encountered 2 human ships that disappeared before contact could be made. General Vexter studied the map with growing alarm. How many human ships are we tracking? At least 25 separate vessels across 17 systems. But Supreme Admiral, this may only be what we can detect. Human stealth technology appears to be more advanced than ours. The implications hit Kethver like a physical blow. If the humans had 25 ships operating just in the border region, how many might they have in total? If each group of 5 ships could devastate a Zarathian battle fleet, what did that say about human military capabilities? What about their construction activities? Vexter asked. Commander Yeltes switched the display to show another set of data. This is perhaps most concerning. We have detected human construction projects on asteroids and moons in at least 12 systems. The scale suggests permanent installations rather than temporary bases. Permanent installations, Kethver repeated slowly. They are not just exploring. They are building infrastructure. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan was reviewing the after-action reports from Captain Davis's reconnaissance mission. The conference room at Frontier Command was filled with senior officers trying to understand what had happened at Kepler 442. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Admiral Sullivan said. 5 patrol ships engaged 200 alien warships and successfully withdrew with minimal casualties. That's correct, Admiral. Captain Davis replied via communication link from his damaged ship. We disabled approximately 70 enemy vessels using improvised tactics and standard patrol ship equipment. General Frank Murphy shook his head in amazement. Rick, you were flying mining ships and cargo haulers modified for patrol duty. How? Did you manage to defeat a fleet that size? We didn't defeat them, General. We survived them. The aliens fought like they expected us to stand still and trade shots. When we used mobile tactics and targeted their weapon systems instead of trying to destroy whole ships, they couldn't adapt fast enough. Dr. Lisa Grant, who had returned with the reconnaissance fleet, added her analysis. The Zarathians appear to be accustomed to fighting enemies who use brute force tactics. They have powerful weapons but limited tactical flexibility. Admiral Helen Ross, who commanded the Second Fleet, looked concerned. If they're willing to send 200 ships against a 5-ship patrol, what will they do when they realize we have larger forces available? That's exactly what worries me, Admiral Sullivan replied. We need to assume they will escalate further. I'm authorizing the deployment of Second Fleet to establish a defensive perimeter. How many ships? General Murphy asked. 12 vessels. That should be sufficient to protect our border colonies while we attempt to establish proper diplomatic contact. What the human commanders did not realize was that their measured response was being interpreted very differently by Zarathian intelligence. Commander Yeltes had been monitoring human communications and troop movements, and her conclusions were reaching new levels of alarm. Supreme Admiral, she reported during an emergency War Council meeting, human military deployments suggest an empire of unprecedented scale. The holographic display now showed a map spanning dozens of star systems, with markers indicating suspected human territory. The scope was staggering, covering an area 3 times larger than the Zarathian Empire. Based on communication intercepts and shipping patterns, the humans appear to control at least 50 star systems. Their Second Fleet designation suggests they have multiple numbered fleets, possibly dozens of them. Fleet Commander Vexmore, still recovering from his defeat at Kepler 442, added his tactical assessment. The 5 ships that fought my fleet showed coordination that requires extensive training and preparation. For humans to deploy such forces casually in a border skirmish suggests military capabilities far beyond what we initially estimated. Many total ships might they possess? Kethver asked. Commander Yeltas hesitated before answering. Conservative estimates suggest at least 500 combat vessels. Worst-case scenarios indicate they might have thousands. The War Council. Chamber fell silent. The Zerothian Empire possessed approximately 800 warships total, accumulated over 3 centuries of conquest. If the humans had similar or larger numbers, and if their ships could fight as effectively as the 5 vessels at Kepler 442, then the Empire faced a threat unlike anything in its history. Commander Zelenoth, still leading reconnaissance missions along the human border, transmitted her latest findings. Supreme Admiral, I must report additional concerning developments. Human patrol activities have increased dramatically. We are detecting regular traffic between their systems, suggesting a well-established transportation network. Show me, Kethver ordered. The display updated to show movement patterns throughout. Human space. Lines of light indicated shipping routes, patrol paths, and communication networks that painted a picture of a vast and sophisticated civilization. Most disturbing, Zelenoth continued, is the casual nature of their operations. Human ships travel alone or in small groups across hundreds of light years without apparent concern for their safety. This suggests either supreme confidence or military strength sufficient to protect such extended operations. Back in human space, Admiral Ross was preparing to depart Earth with the Second Fleet. Her 12 ships represented a significant but routine deployment for border security. The vessels were a mix of cruisers and destroyers, all well-armed, but designed primarily for patrol and interdiction missions rather than major fleet battles. Our mission is to establish a defensive perimeter and attempt to reopen diplomatic contact with the Zerothians, Admiral Ross briefed her captains. We are not looking for a fight, but we will be prepared for one. Captain Greg Martinez, commanding the Hughes Vigilant, reviewed the tactical data from Captain Davis's engagement. Admiral, if they're willing to send 200 ships against a reconnaissance patrol, they might escalate even further when they see 12 warships. That's a risk we have to take, Greg. Our colonies need protection, and we need to show the Zerothians that attacking human ships has consequences. Captain Lisa Thompson, commanding the UE Sovereign, studied the intelligence reports about Zerothian military capabilities. Their weapons are powerful, but their tactics are rigid. If we can maintain tactical flexibility, 12 ships should be able to handle a much larger force. What Captain Thompson did not know was that Supreme Admiral Kethver was thinking along similar lines, but from the opposite perspective. If 5 human ships could devastate 70 Zerothian vessels, then 12 human ships represented a threat that required the Empire's most powerful response. General Vexter, Kethver said, I am authorizing the mobilization of 1st Battle Fleet. Vexter's 4 eyes widened. 1st Battle Fleet was the Empire's ultimate military force. 500 ships including their most powerful dreadnoughts and their most experienced crews. It had not been deployed as a complete unit in over 50 years. Supreme Admiral, R. You certain? 1st Battle Fleet represents 60% of our total military strength. The humans have shown us what 5 of their ships can do. Now they are sending 12. We cannot afford to underestimate them again. If we are going to fight this war, we must fight it via both civilizations. Supreme Admiral, based on all available intelligence, I believe we are. Admiral Helen Ross stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching her Second Fleet move into position near the Proxima Threshold system. 12 ships arranged in a standard patrol formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. It was a routine deployment by human standards, designed to protect the border colonies while diplomatic efforts continued. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from Zarathian space," reported Lieutenant Dan Cooper from the communications station. "It's much larger than anything we've seen before." Captain Greg Martinez, commanding the UEC, vigilant alongside the flagship, transmitted from his bridge. "Helen, my sensors are showing at least 400 contacts. Maybe 500. This isn't another patrol fleet." Admiral Ross felt her stomach tighten. 12 ships against 500 was not a battle they could win through conventional means, but retreat might signal weakness to the Zarathians and encourage further aggression against human colonies. "All ships, this is Defiant," she transmitted to her fleet. "Maintain formation but prepare for combat. We're going to find out what the Zarathians really want." The Zarathian First Battle Fleet emerged from hyperspace like a wall of metal and energy. 500 warships from massive dreadnoughts to swift destroyers, all focused on the 12 human vessels near Proxima Threshold. Supreme Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, the colossal dreadnought Vethkaran, watching his life's work unfold. "Signal the human fleet," he ordered. "Demand their immediate surrender." The transmission reached Admiral Ross. Within minutes, the alien voice was cold and threatening, even through the computer translation. "Human vessels, you face the full might of the Zarathian Empire. 500 ships of the First Battle Fleet. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Utterly. Admiral Ross looked at her tactical display. 500 ships against 12. The smart move was to retreat, but something in the Zarathian message bothered her. Lieutenant Cooper had intercepted fragments of their communications, and the translations suggested the aliens thought this was a major human military operation. "This is Admiral Ross of the Terran Second Fleet," she replied. "We are conducting routine border security operations in human space. We have no hostile intentions toward your empire." "More lies," Supreme Admiral Kithfer responded. "Your species has been conducting military preparations across dozens of star systems. Your coordination and tactical abilities represent a clear threat to our empire. Surrender now or face total annihilation." Captain Greg Martinez opened a private channel to Admiral Ross. "Helen, they're talking like we're invading them, but we're just doing border patrol." Captain Lisa Thompson, commanding the UE Sovereign, added her observation. "Admiral, based on their formation and approach, they think we're the advance guard of a major human fleet. They're treating 12 patrol ships like we're a strategic threat." The pieces began falling into place for Admiral Ross. The Zarathians had misinterpreted every human action since first contact. They thought the Pioneer was a warship. They believed Captain Davis's reconnaissance mission was invasion preparation. Now they saw 12 patrol ships as the beginning of a major military campaign. "All ships," Admiral Ross transmitted to her fleet. "I think the Zarathians believe we represent a much larger human military force than we actually do. If that's true, we might be able to use their misconceptions to our advantage." Major Paul Anderson, commanding the Marine detachment aboard the Defiant, checked his boarding equipment. "Admiral, if they think we're more dangerous than we are, maybe we should act the part." The battle began when Supreme Admiral Kethfer lost patience and ordered his fleet to attack. 500 Zarathian warships opened fire with thousands of energy cannons, turning space around the 12 human ships into a storm of deadly light that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Admiral Ross had learned from Captain Davis's experience at Kepler 442. Instead of trying to fight conventionally, she ordered her fleet to scatter and use the same improvised tactics that had worked before. Captain Lisa Thompson used the UES Sovereign Sensor Array to coordinate all 12 ships as a single unit. The human vessels moved with perfect synchronization, each ship knowing exactly what the others were doing without any detectable communication between them. To the Zarathians, it looked like the humans possessed some form of telepathic battle coordination. How are they doing this? General Vexter demanded from his position on the Zarathian flagship. 12 ships moving as one mind, anticipating our every move before we make it. Captain Greg Martinez demonstrated the human approach to improvised warfare. The U's Vigilant had been conducting mining surveys before the deployment, and Martinez still had industrial equipment aboard. He used the ship's ore processing facility to create projectiles that his weapon systems fired at Zarathian vessels. The crude ammunition was devastating against ships designed to resist energy weapons, but not solid impacts. "Their weapons keep changing," reported the Zarathian tactical officer. "First energy beams, then solid projectiles, now some kind of electromagnetic pulse that disables our systems." The electromagnetic pulse came from Chief Engineer Mary Johnson aboard the U.E.'s Liberty. She had rigged the ship's power plant to create massive electrical discharges that overloaded Zarathian electronics. It was dangerous and could destroy her own ship, but it worked perfectly against enemy vessels that got too close. Major Paul Anderson's Marines conducted boarding actions that terrified the Zarathians. Human soldiers moved through alien ships with precision and coordination that seemed impossible. They disabled critical systems and retreated before defenders could respond, leaving Zarathian crews confused and demoralized. Report. Supreme Admiral Kethfer demanded as alarms rang throughout his flagship. 130 ships damaged or destroyed, his tactical officer replied with shock. The humans are using weapons and tactics that defy analysis. Every time we adapt to one approach, they change to something completely different. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Zarathians kept expecting overwhelming numbers to ensure victory, but the 12 human ships seemed to be everywhere at once. Every Zarathian tactic was countered by human innovation. Every weapon they deployed was met by some new improvised response. Captain Nicole Webb, commanding the UES Falcon, made perhaps the most audacious move of the entire battle. When her ship was surrounded by 30 Zarathian vessels, she used her mining charges to create a debris field that blocked enemy sensors. Then she flew her ship through the wreckage, using the confusion to ram 3 enemy cruisers before escaping. Impossible. Commander Thex Moore reported from his position monitoring the battle. 12 ships should not be able to resist 500 of our finest vessels. Yet they fight with such skill and coordination that our numerical advantage means nothing. The turning point came when Captain Martinez realized the Zarathians were holding back their most powerful ships, trying to capture human vessels intact for study. This gave him an idea that would end the battle and possibly the war. "Admiral Ross," he transmitted, "I think the Zarathians want to capture us alive to learn our secrets. What if we convince them that's a very bad idea? What do you have in mind, Greg?" "My ship is heavily damaged. I'm going to broadcast a surrender message. Let them think they're about to capture human technology. Then I'll show them why that's a mistake." Captain Martinez opened communications on all Zarathian frequencies. "Zarathian Fleet, this is Captain Martinez of the Terran 2nd Fleet Advanced Reconnaissance Group. My vessel is disabled and unable to continue fighting. You have defeated our forward scout ships." Supreme Admiral Kethfer felt a surge of victory. Finally, one of the human vessels was surrendering. Capturing intact human technology might provide the key to understanding their superior capabilities. "Prepare boarding parties," he ordered. "I want that human ship captured intact." But Captain Martinez had one more surprise. As Zarathian boarding craft approached his ship, he activated a final transmission that would echo through both civilizations. "Zarathian Fleet, you have asked for our surrender after defeating 12 ships of our border patrol. You should know that this engagement has been transmitted to Earth Command. The Second Fleet Advanced Reconnaissance Group reports mission successful. Intelligence gathered. Enemy capabilities assessed. Request immediate deployment of 3rd, 4th, and 5th battle fleets for full territorial defense. The message was a complete fabrication. The human Second Fleet had no advanced reconnaissance group, and there were no additional numbered fleets standing by. But the Zarathians didn't know that. You should also know, Martinez continued, that the Terran Defense Force considers attacks on exploration and patrol vessels to be acts of war against all human colonies. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences when our main battle fleets arrive. The transmission had exactly the effect Martinez intended. Supreme Admiral Kethfer stared at the tactical display showing 130 of his ships, destroyed or disabled by 12 human vessels, and realized the terrible truth. These weren't human main battle fleets. These were just patrol ships and advanced scouts. General Vexter, he said quietly, if 12 human patrol ships can do this,